So happy to be here with you all today. I hope you're ready to go over some review. We're going to dive into basically reviewing all of the things that you've learned from the effective communication and the problem-solving decision-making lectures. So we're just going to kind of recap everything, see how you're feeling about all of the concepts, address any questions that you might still have about how to apply these skills in the real world. And then when you go into the skills lab, you'll be doing technical proficiency. So you're basically kind of getting a condensed review of the entire program that you've kind of gone through thus far so that you can just get some extra practice and some extra time to really let it sink in and absorb. And so let me just share my screen. All right. So we should all be able to see my slides. Can we all see? Yeah, hopefully. Okay. All right, so as we go through this, please do feel free to share in the Slack chat, the live session chat that we've got on Slack, or because we have such a small group, you are more than welcome to come off of mute and share verbally. That's totally fine. We're not doing anything through Menti today. It's all going to be just a slide review. And this is very much an opportunity to discuss real world application. So I'll give you some opportunities throughout the training today to share some of your experiences, any of the things that you've tried, what worked, what didn't work, etc. And then you'll get some really good practice with the TAs when we get into the technical proficiency part. So please do feel free to share. This is a safe space. It's a controlled environment where you can actually put some of this stuff into practice so that you can feel a little bit more confident taking it out into the real world. All right, so let's dive in. So we're going to start with reviewing the effective communication frameworks. So we're going to go over the 7 C's, the no, feel, do, the stop framework, the win framework, the check framework, and the aid framework. And I know this has come up before. There are a lot of frameworks. I want to offer you the reminder that if you don't remember them all, that's okay. We are going to go over them today. And also, you do have access to them in your training site. And when it comes to these frameworks, they don't necessarily have to be used like some sort of a tick list. It's not like you have to remember, oh, I'm in a work conflict situation. Now I have to think about aid. What was A again? I don't remember. Like, what I really want you to take away from these as we go through these frameworks, these are great ways for memory recall. That's why we put these into frameworks. But what I really want you to walk away with is just the general understanding of the various ways you can approach different workplace situations when it comes to communicating with other people, solving problems, or making decisions. So if you don't remember the exact framework, that is totally okay. You will not fail as a leader, I promise. It's just something that you can use to kind of try helping with that memory recall. But more than anything, it's just the language and the approaches that we're aiming for helping you keep into your head. I hope that helps. All right. So let's get going. First things first, let's do a little confidence check. So 1 through 6, you can pop this in the chat or you can just start shouting out numbers. That's totally fine too. There's not very many of you. But let me know, how confident are you feeling on a scale of 1 to 5 with all of these frameworks? And if one in particular is standing out to you that feels particularly challenging, let me know. So you can pop it into the Slack chat. Hen, is that a confidence rating or is that a framework that you find or a skill that you find particularly challenging? And again, you are all welcome to come off mute if you would like. Oh, you meant 5. Oh, good. Okay. Is that the confidence rating then? Okay. Uh, Bargavi 4, Alex 4, Rebecca 4. Okay. So we've got some pretty high confidence on a lot of these skills. Brilliant. Ayla, is it Ayla or Isla? Ayla? Isla? You must tell me if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. If it drives you nuts when your name gets pronounced wrong, I totally get it. I'm the same way. So please don't hesitate to tell me if I said it wrong. I don't want to drive anybody crazy. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for sharing that, everyone. So it looks like we're actually feeling pretty confident and comfortable. So that's good. So I encourage you as we go through these to please share some of your experiences, because if you're feeling that confident, that tells me that you're applying this stuff in real life. And I would love to hear how you're doing that, because I think that we can all learn from each other's experiences. So when we're putting these things in practical application and we're actually trying them out in the real world, it can be so valuable to hear how your peers are doing that. So let's start with the 7 C's. Who has used the 7 C's? Tell me in the chat, or you can raise your hand and come off mute, whatever feels good for you. But tell me how you have applied this. Who has applied it and how did that go? How did you use it? Let me know. And if you haven't applied it, you can say no in the chat too. That's fine. Does the silence mean you haven't applied it? Or you have and you don't want to tell me? Is it a secret? All right, I see typing. All right, well, while the typing continues, I just want to recap that this is a great tool to use as like a diagnostic tool before delivering a message. So if you're delivering a new policy, a change, something like that, this can be really great for that. If you're getting ready to write something, if you're going to send an email or a Slack message, this is a great tool for you to use before you actually submit that communication. Alive specifically tried to be more concise to avoid confusion. Amazing. That's awesome. Do you find that going through all 7 C's is helpful for you, or have you focused specifically on just that? Like when it comes to the 7 C's, is it just that 1 C, or do you actually go through all of it and you find that that's the one that needs the most work? I'm curious. So yeah, this can be really great for that. So it's helpful for speaking and it's also helpful for written. So if you're getting ready to say run a team meeting, or you're getting ready to go into a one-on-one and there's information that you need to convey to whomever you're speaking to, this is a great way to just kind of check your messaging before you actually deliver it. Try to use most, it depends on the situation. Okay, awesome. Thank you for sharing that. That's brilliant. All right. So do we have any questions on the 7 C's and how to use it? Let me know in the chat. And the big takeaways for this when it comes to clear communication is we want to be specific, we want to be comprehensive, and we want to be clear, right? So we want to make sure that we are focusing on not just the messaging itself, but who we're giving that message to, right? We've got to think about our audience. Who are we speaking to? What do we actually need them to know? What's most important for them to take away from this communication? The who, what, when, where, and why. You want to consider all of those things. And then you want to make sure that you want to simplify your language. So a mentor of mine actually once told me, like, always just think of everyone as having like a grade 5 comprehension. Like, keep it that simple. So that way, no matter who you're speaking to, they're most likely going to understand what you're saying. So you wouldn't want to use a bunch of jargon or technical language for a bunch of people who, aren't developers, something like that. Like, you want to consider the audience so that they understand. And then also make sure that it's two-way, right? Even though we might be delivering a message, you want to make sure that you're creating space and encouraging questions for clarity. One of the big things that I love to say at the end of any communication is, okay, what are you walking away with from this conversation? Or what are the things that I just communicated to you? Tell me in your words what I just said. What did you just hear from me? You might be surprised. People are paying attention to things that are completely not your key takeaways. They might be absorbing things that actually were just kind of filler. Everyone interprets things differently. Everyone holds on to things differently. So always make space for that clarity. Don't be one of those people that gives a team meeting and says, okay, this is all the changes. This is what we're going to do. Thanks for listening. Have a good day. Before you let everybody go, make sure you ask them, okay, what are you doing with this information that I just gave you? What are you walking away with, right? Make sure that open communication is there. Make sense? Any questions, comments, concerns? All right, let's continue. Please feel free if you do have anything come up, throw it in the chat. I am watching the chat, the live Slack chat. And again, you can always come off of mute if you feel comfy. I am totally fine with that too. We have such a small group. There's so much space to come off mute. And we're going to want you to come off mute when you do Skills Lab anyways. So, might as well get comfortable with it. All right. So let's talk about the no, feel, do framework. Has anyone used this one? Let me know in the chat if anyone has used this framework, or you can raise your hand and come off mute. That's fine too. But let me know if you've used this framework. Asking yourself, what do I want them to understand? How do I want them to feel? What do I want them to do next? So this is a great framework, especially for change management. In a place like Amazon, like procedures might change often, policies might change often, the way that things are done, because everything is so fast moving, and it might shift according to your level of busyness. So like maybe when it's holiday season, things might change. When it's Prime Week, things might change. So this is a great framework to use in those kinds of situations, because you're making sure that you are not just giving the information, but considering the impact on the person, right? Because when things change as humans, we naturally feel a little bit resistant. And people don't necessarily always remember what you say, but they do remember how you made them feel. And we want people to feel good about the changes that are happening, because their instinct is going to be to not feel good about it. Their instinct is going to be to resist it, because we are creatures of habits, us humans. We don't like it when things change. We don't like unexpected things to happen. So you want to consider, what is it that we really need them to know? What do I want them to understand? What do I want them to hold on to? How do I want them to feel about it? We probably want them to feel good about it. And then what do I want them to do next? So they should have a clear action, a clear understanding of what they need to do whenever you're rolling out these changes. All right, so let me know if you have any questions about this framework, and let me know who's used it. I don't see anyone typing in the chat yet telling me that they've used it, but tell me if you've used it and what was the situation that you used it in. So I'm going to keep allowing space for that so we can have a little bit of discussion about how you're applying this in the real world. So the biggest thing to consider when it comes to no, feel, do is we're trying to influence, right? We don't want to lead from position. We don't want to lead from top-down thinking. It's not about doing what we say because we're in charge. We want to influence them by creating strong relationships. We want to have trust and respect, mutual respect between each other. We want to find that common ground, shared goals. We want to focus on the benefits. So some of you may have heard WIFM, what's in it for me? So we want to always make sure that we're addressing for the people that we're communicating with, like, what is the benefit for them? And that also helps with the trust factor, because if you show them how this is going to benefit them, it's also showing them that you have their best interest in mind, that you're not just telling them what to do because you're the leader, but you actually care about their experience in the workplace. And so you're going to show them how something benefits them. So you kind of get not just the persuasion, but also that helps with creating that trust and respect. And then engaging with ideas. So we never want to stay in the mindset that our way is the right way. Being the leader doesn't necessarily mean that we're always right. Okay. So we want to create space for collaboration, ask for input, ask for feedback, be willing to be wrong. be willing to be open to ideas that are not yours. Okay. And when you recognize those ideas, acknowledge those ideas, that's going to help not only encourage participation, but comes back to that trust factor again. So all of these three things, the trust, the persuasion, and the ideas, they all work hand in hand to enhance the other one. Okay. So what questions do we have? And what scenarios have you used this in, or could you use this in? So if you've never used this framework, tell me about a time where maybe it would make sense to use it. What do you think? I see him is typing. I'll just leave a little bit more space for this because I see someone's typing. And again, if you want to come off mute, you can. It might be faster to just raise your hand and pop off mute. It's totally fine. So, and I know we've got a lot of discussion questions here, but really I'm most curious about if and when you've used it and what that experience was like. Used it before between friends. Okay, cool. Tell them be familiar with the target for the day. The day we can work easier and help others to work more productive. That's awesome, Him. Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. And so see, in a situation like that, I love what you shared there because you knew what you wanted them to understand, and then you wanted them to feel I'm making an assumption here now because I'm pulling it from what you shared, but it sounds like you wanted them to feel good, like things were easier. So you wanted it to feel like a positive situation. And then you kind of showed them the benefit, like how it's going to make it easier for them and make them more productive. So you really kind of took all of those little pieces and put that together. That's really good practical application. Thank you for that. Amazing. All right. So any questions, any other thoughts or ideas about how you could apply this in real life, what that might look like? Just going to take another sip of water while you think about that. Okay. Well, let's dive into emotional intelligence then, shall we? All right. So emotional intelligence. Let's check in. So for a lot of us, this might come naturally. For others, it might be a little bit of a challenge. So tell me, which of these areas do you find most challenging when you are under pressure or in an emotionally charged situation, in a heightened emotion kind of situation? Recognizing emotions, so your own emotions maybe, or recognizing others' emotions. Is it empathy, understanding, or seeing things from their perspective? Managing your own emotions, conflict management, adaptability, that could be a tough one. So which one do you find most challenging? Let me know. Challenging to not avoid conflict. Ah, Alex, that's a tricky one. Conflict will always happen. It's not really anything that we can avoid, but it is something that we can work through. And that's the important part, right? So the conflict, just like when what words? Let me reframe this. Okay. When we are in an emotionally charged situation, the conflict is already there. So there's really no way to avoid emotionally charged situations because humans are incredibly variable and they're chock full of emotions. And not everyone necessarily knows or understands when and where those emotions might come up. What really matters most is actually being able to navigate those conflicts when they happen. So if we look at our emotional intelligence areas, so the recognizing emotions, the empathy, the managing emotions, the conflict management, and the adaptability, these are the skills that will help us when the conflict comes up. Does that make sense, Alex? Is that helpful? I can see you on camera, so if you, okay, yes, perfect. Thank you. All right. So does anyone else have any particular areas that they find challenging of any of these: recognizing emotions, empathy, managing emotions, conflict management, adaptability? I can say for me, one of my biggest areas of challenge is the managing emotions and sometimes the adaptability. Like these are things that I personally can struggle with myself. Um, if I am triggered, it can be very challenging for me to create space. So we're going to go over the stop framework in just a minute, but that is my go-to actually. It's such a great framework because I do sometimes have trouble. Like if I've been triggered, like my face will turn red. I don't know if anyone else gets like this, but if I'm like emotionally charged, I get teary-eyed. So like my face will turn red and I'll get tears in my eyes. Everyone can tell I'm having an emotion. There's no hiding it. So it really does take a lot of effort for me to like, hold on a second, let me create some space here. So it's normal. We all have our areas, right? Okay, so let's dive into this. Please feel free to share wherever you are feeling challenged as I continue through this. I'm still watching the chat. Okay, so the stop framework. Has anyone else used this? So I just said it's my favorite one. I do like to use this one. So stop, pause before reacting, take a breath, T. O is observe, notice your emotions and thoughts, and then P, proceed, respond thoughtfully and constructively. Let me know if any of you have used this. I will tell you from my personal experience using this framework, you might be surprised, especially when you get to the observe part, the emotions and thoughts, you may be surprised of where this stuff comes from. Because like all of the triggers that create emotional responses for us, they come from stuff that happened when we were like 2. So if you actually sit and observe and start to notice, like, what are your emotions? What are the thoughts that go with those emotions? You will see that like all of this stuff comes from something that happened way, way, way back when. And it becomes a trigger because when you were 2, whatever the situation was made you believe that you were somehow being attacked or threatened. Like emotions are coming from an idea or a meaning that we've made out of a situation. So like if I told a joke when I was like 4 and I just was learning how to talk and I thought that I said something funny, but then I was told I was being naughty, then now if anyone doesn't laugh at my jokes as an adult, I might get really emotional and angry and be like, oh, I'm in trouble because I said something that's not funny. And that's like a bit of an exaggerated example, but that's how it is, like with emotions. That's where emotions come from. They come from things that have nothing to do with the situation. It's the meaning that we're making out of the situation and our self-perception that's being compromised as a result of the situation. It's really important to understand that that's what emotions are. They're energy and motion, right? They have to just kind of run through. And the more we can notice and recognize the thoughts that surround them, the meaning that we're making out of the situation, the easier it is for us to proceed. And the idea here is to respond to the situation as opposed to react to it. So if I react to my emotion, I might shout, I might throw things, I might cry, my face will turn red, whatever. But what we want to do is create enough space between the emotion that we feel and the actual response to it, because there's a significant difference between responding and reacting. Okay, make sense? Let me know how this is landing in the chat. All right, so the key takeaways, you want to recognize the emotions. So the more we recognize them in ourselves, the easier it's going to be to recognize it in other people. So I know that if I get upset, if I'm like angry or embarrassed, That's the red face and the tears in the eyes. That's what happens to me. So if I see somebody else with red face and tears in the eyes, I might think, ooh, I wonder if they're feeling angry, or I wonder if they're feeling embarrassed. I might want to check in on that, right? So the more that we notice about ourselves, the more we can understand what other people are experiencing. It won't always be the same, but it can help us get a better understanding. We want to reflect, so look for the patterns. What triggers those strong emotions? I know if I'm in any situation where I feel like someone is telling me that I don't know what I'm doing, I get very triggered. Like, I don't like to feel like I'm not knowledgeable or smart. So that's when I notice the red face, the tears, the clenching. So pay attention to those things. And then we respond, right? We don't want to react, we want to respond. So we're going to pay attention, we're going to match our tone to the situation. We're going to show that we care, right? So if we have that empathy, I can say, oh, if you're upset, I understand. I might be upset too. I get it. We want to use I statements. So we don't want to accuse. If we say you are getting upset, you are being unreasonable, sounds very accusatory. So rather, I'm concerned about the situation because it impacts XYZ. And then ask for feedback. How did that go? How did you feel about that situation? I was feeling very upset. I don't know how I handled that. How did I handle that? Can you tell me? So let people give you that feedback so you can better understand yourself and how you operate. You might not think that you're coming off a certain way. You might think that you're hiding your emotions well. You may be surprised to find out that actually people can see right through it. So get that feedback so you can make adjustments. All right. So before we move on, one final check in. Who has used this? When did you use it? Was it helpful? And if you haven't used it, can you think of a situation where you might use it in the real world? And is there anything that makes it difficult to think about practicing this? Let me know. I'll give it another minute-ish. See if anyone wants to dive in. All right, I see someone typing, yay. And again, we do have a very small group. So if you want to just come off of mute instead of typing, you can totally do that. That is totally fine. I am just curious. Are there any situations where this might come in handy? Is there anything that you find particularly challenging? All right, you are a quiet group today. Okay, let's go. Let's keep going. Let me know if anything comes up. All right, so let's talk about feedback. So, is anyone feeling challenged by giving or receiving feedback? Let me know in the chat or with a virtual hand raise. Does anyone find that giving or receiving feedback is challenging? Let me know. All right. Don't see anything. So maybe you all find this fairly comfortable and easy. So that'll make this section fairly quick and easy. All right. So when it comes to being receptive to feedback, we want to remember that feedback is not necessarily a criticism. It's always a learning opportunity, right? So even if we think about a first attempt on an assessment from this program, that maybe you have to do a second attempt now, that is a form of feedback. It's a learning opportunity. So there's an opportunity for us to better understand, like, what is it about test taking that maybe is creating a challenge for us? There's also a it could just be a situation where there's a lack of understanding or a lack of clarity around something. So getting feedback about where you might have missed the mark could just shed light on the fact that you didn't understand something or something wasn't clear. And so now there's an opportunity for you to get that clarity, right? So when you are receiving feedback, it's important to remember that self-regulation. So the STOP framework comes in handy for this. So you want to listen to understand, not to respond. Make sure that you're checking in on those emotional responses. And if you are getting feedback that you find particularly challenging and you feel that emotional response, I would invite you to be very candid about what you're experiencing. Like, I'm feeling really upset by this feedback right now. I need a moment to process it. Or I'm noticing that I'm feeling embarrassed by what you just said. So be candid about that and be clear with what you're experiencing to the person who's giving you the feedback, because that's going to help create some really great dialogue. I see Rebecca says, yes, I feel quite comfortable getting feedback. That's amazing. Good. That's awesome. So when we reframe feedback as an opportunity, that is having a growth mindset. And the growth mindset is what allows for greater relationship building, greater innovation. We move forward. All right, so we've got the win framework for giving feedback. So if you're the one actually delivering the feedback, you want to think about what went well, what can be improved, and what are the next steps. So the biggest thing when giving any kind of feedback really is making sure that you are specific and you are solution focused and you are being respectful. You also want to consider, like, when you're giving the feedback. There's a time and a place, right? So you wouldn't want to give someone feedback in the middle of a stressful situation. If you're like busy trying to get trucks out and like stuff's being loaded and everything's chaos, probably not the best time to say, hey, I noticed that yesterday you did this thing and it was all wrong. Like, it's not really gonna land well, right? So be mindful of that. So what went well, what can be improved, and what are the next steps? Next steps is important, especially if you are giving feedback for improvement. The person needs to understand how to implement the feedback. So giving them an idea of what to do next is going to help a lot. Akshi Raj, it depends on emotional maturity and growth mindset and if you are open to receiving feedback and work on it. Yes, that's so true. 100%. Thank you for that. All right. So when we consider the timing, quite difficult to give feedback to superiors. Ooh, Vasile, I think that's how you say that. Vasile, let me know if I said that wrong. So giving feedback to superiors, that would be managing up is another way that we might describe that. So I'm glad that you asked that. So if you are going to give feedback to a superior or a manager or whomever, someone that you report to, I would say first and foremost, always ask permission. I have something that's very concerning to me. Do you mind if I share that with you? I have something that I want to share with you. It feels really difficult. Are you in a good headspace right now for me to talk about this? So opening the door that way to just kind of make them aware of what's coming, right? And you might even open with, how receptive are you to getting feedback right now? Because I'm really concerned about something. And also, if you are going to give feedback that's critical, that's important, that if you don't give the feedback, it could damage the relationship, I would open with that. Like, I really want to share this with you because our working relationship is important to me. And I think if I don't say something, that it's going to create a rift. And I don't want that, right? So make sure that they understand that the reason you're sharing the feedback is with a positive intention. It's not just to your benefit to get it off your chest, but also to their benefit because your working relationship is potentially being compromised. Okay, you're welcome. I hope that makes sense. I hope that helps. Okay. So, and timing, since we're talking about timing, Vasile, since you brought that up, Timing also matters. So there's a time to do it and a time not to do it. So if the person that you're wanting to give the feedback to is emotionally heightened, wait until the emotions calm down. So if you remember from the lecture that we did, there was an example of a safety issue. So if if a near miss just happened, you wouldn't want to go and tell the person, hey, if you had stacked that more evenly, that near miss wouldn't have happened. Like, wait until they get over the initial jolt of the near miss, because that's a scary situation and that's going to be a heightened emotional moment, right? So let everything calm down first, then give the feedback. And don't give feedback if you are angry or frustrated. So if you want to give feedback to somebody because something went wrong and you're getting frustrated by it, like, every time you're always missing this, or every time you're making these errors, we've talked about this 10 times and you're still getting it wrong. Like, if you're feeling that kind of frustrated, wait until you calm down, then go give them the feedback. So that's what we mean by when to give feedback and when not to. And if you are going to give it, you want it to still be relevant. So don't wait like 2 months before you tell them. You want to make sure that it has purpose, like there's a clear outcome that you're trying to achieve, and be clear with what that is. And then give that context and support. So you can offer suggestions, offer support, offer resources, whatever might be needed. But make sure that when giving feedback, you're always still making room for that two-way communication. Effective communication is always two-way. It's never, we don't talk at people, we talk with them, right? Okay, so we want to be open. We want to also be clear and respectful when we're the ones giving feedback. We want to turn that feedback into action. Feedback doesn't really do anything if we don't do something with it, right? And then always being, when you are receiving feedback, make sure you're listening to understand, and then ask questions if it's not clear. Is this all making sense? Since all of you kind of gave a confidence rating of 4, I'm guessing this is kind of just refresher, but let me know if any questions are coming up. And we've actually gotten a pretty decent discussion here from you all about the feedback. So let me know if there's any feedback in particular that helped you grow. Maybe it was even difficult to digest at first, but you realized later that it helped you grow. Let me know. Let me know in the chat. I'll give you a moment to type. I can share with you one of my own stories. I remember once I was having a little bit of a tantrum in the middle of a call center floor when I was a floor supervisor, and our resource director walked up to me and just quite bluntly said, "Hey, you're a leader in this building, act like it." I was like, "Oh, oops, sorry." And I didn't like receiving that feedback, but it actually did make me a lot more aware of how I was presenting myself. So it did help me grow a lot as a leader. That one little bit of being scolded like a child. It wasn't comfy. It wasn't nice. I definitely had a red face and tears in my eyes, but I learned from it and I grew from it. That's important. Pause before reacting and listen first definitely helped me a lot. That's awesome. Thank you. Cool. Good stuff. And I see more typing. So thank you, Raj. And I see, it looks like Vasile's typing. I'm gonna take one more sip of water. All right. Okay. Vasile, please do finish your thought. I'm gonna keep going to the next slide, but I'll come back to the chat in a moment. All right. So miscommunication. This happens a lot. A great way to make sure that we're avoiding miscommunication is the check framework. So we want to make sure that we go through the check here, evaluate, challenge, and keep an open mind. Keep an open mind is a big one on this one. So this is really great for any moment where you might be jumping to conclusions. We might not always recognize that we're jumping to conclusions. That if you do, if you notice that there might be some bias between people, or there's some misunderstanding happening, people are taking away something that you didn't intend, this is a great opportunity. Let's see, receive feedback from a new superior that recently joined the team, didn't know the process, said that I didn't know my job. Okay, the issue, but was reflected in the process of, oh, interesting. Okay. That's an interesting situation. Hmm. Reflect, okay. See, and sometimes the issue is systemic. It has nothing to do with us. Sometimes the process is broken. And that is important. That's such a good takeaway, actually. I'm glad that you shared that. That's a good takeaway for us as leaders, right? And actually, that ties in very well what you just shared, Vasile, with this check framework. Because if we, the leader, are thinking that someone doesn't know what they're doing or that they don't know how to do the job, this is a great opportunity for us to ask ourselves, am I just jumping to conclusions? Am I making an assumption? And now I can come to this check framework. I can ask open-ended questions and I can listen to the other person actively, not to respond, but to understand. Like, tell me your experience in this. What is actually going on? And then challenge any assumptions when you notice them. So if I'm sitting here as the leader thinking, this person is always making errors, they clearly don't know what they're doing. So now challenge that, right? Check yourself. Is that true or am I making an assumption? And then be flexible and curious so that way you can avoid bias. Use the stop framework, had a conversation the next day and explain the situation, and they understood where the issue is. That is brilliant. You see, framework is working. Thank you so much for sharing that. I love that. Thank you. So now, you know what's great with that situation that you just shared, Vasile, is that you covered both feedback and the check framework all in one go. Thank you for that. That's awesome. Okay, so we want to always challenge the emotional barriers, right? So if we are in a situation where miscommunication is happening, there are misunderstandings, use that stop framework, pause, just like Vasile shared, pause, take a moment. You want to work through the assumptions and always assume, like, we're trying to say don't assume, but always keep in mind when anyone is giving any kind of feedback, somewhere inside of them, they genuinely think they're doing something good for you. Like, people have positive intentions. It doesn't always come off that way. But if you just check in and be like, okay, what could be the positive intention behind this? That can start to help you check some of those assumptions as well. And then, of course, actively listen. We want to listen to understand, not to respond. All right. Have you ever caught yourself making an assumption that wasn't accurate? Tell me in the chat. Let me know. Have you ever caught yourself making an assumption that wasn't accurate? Especially if we think about warehouse, there's day shift, night shift, right? There's that never-ending feud between day shift and night shift. Have you ever made an assumption about the other shift that you turned out, like it turned out it wasn't at all accurate? I'm definitely guilty of that. I have definitely made some assumptions in my day, only to find out that I was way off base and then felt a little bit bad about it. All right, I see typing in the chat. Please do finish your thought if you're typing. I'm going to continue on, but I will come back to the chat. All right, so conflict management, the AID framework. This is great. So this is great if you're like mediating. So if the situation is feeling very tense, if there's a conflict between people, this is a really great way to kind of work through that. Raj, yes, it does happen sometimes. I have noticed that. It does, right? You know, we don't mean to make assumptions, but we draw from our past experiences, and there's just a part of us that says, oh, it happened this way once before. It must be the same way this time. We've got to be careful of that because not everything repeats. It only repeats if we assume and believe it to be repeating, but it might not actually be the case at all. Be open to new experiences. Okay. So the AID framework, we want to acknowledge, investigate, and discuss. The acknowledge piece of the AID framework, if you don't take anything else away from this framework, if you just take away the acknowledge, that would be one of the most important parts. Okay. Let's see, Vasile, trying to avoid, but assumptions is something that all of us will have at some point, maybe related to, yes, actually, that's so true. That is a good call out. And it is, it's just kind of our natural default sometimes as humans, right? And the great thing is that the more self-aware you are as a person in leadership, the better you are going to be able to create trust and build strong relationships with your teams because you can recognize that, hey, this happens. It's normal, but I'm willing to recognize it and be curious and look for alternatives and get curious about what could actually be true rather than just sticking to my assumption, right? That's awesome. Okay, so the acknowledge part of the aid framework. This is what is going to help almost immediately start to bring the tension down, is to show empathy and recognize the perspective of everyone involved. So if you've got two people going back and forth, no, you said this, you said this, you said you were going to do this, you didn't do this, you were wrong, I was right, etc., etc. Taking that step back with them and saying, hey, listen, I understand that everyone's feeling upset. Susie, I get what you're saying about your side of it. That makes sense why you would think this. Bob, I hear your side of it. It makes sense to me why you would think this. So, is it possible that both of you are just misunderstanding the situation, right? But first and foremost, acknowledge nobody's right or wrong in any of these situations. If you start siding with someone like, no, 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 Bob, Susie's right, immediately the tension is just going to escalate. Okay. So always acknowledge everyone's perspective because everyone is deserving of being heard out and being seen and being understood. Okay. Once you've gotten through that, then you can investigate. Okay, now that we understand that you experienced this, you experienced this, both of you may be right to a certain degree, both of you may be wrong to a certain degree. So let's dig in, find out what's really going on here. So you investigate, you gather the facts, you get everything in order, and then you're going to discuss, collaborate, and find a solution together. But that acknowledge piece, if that's not there, investigating and discussing is going to get you nowhere because everyone is still feeling emotionally charged and not ready to be open to any kind of movement forward. So don't skip that acknowledge piece. Okay. Has anyone used the aid framework at all? Let me know in the chat. So when we're using the aid framework, there is emotional intelligence involved. So you want to always remember that empathy, the self-regulation, and being adaptable. That's going to help you with that acknowledgement piece so that you can actually move through the rest of the framework. So tell me if any of you have used the aid framework or a similar approach. If you have any stories about managing a conflict or a performance issue where maybe this could have come in handy, but you didn't know it yet. So some way that you might apply it later, let me know. Let me know. And then just let me know any insights about your own communication style, anything that you want to work on moving forward. I know these are a lot of reflection prompts. You don't have to answer all of them, but just let me know, like, how are things, what's coming up for you now as we come to a close on the effective communication before we dive into problem solving and decision making. What sort of insights have you gained from all of this?
I may have a question.
Please ask.
So, for example, quite often I'm covering one of the departments as proxy lead. Yeah? So, at the same time, we have to build a rota for the associates that will go to other departments as labor share. At the same time, I am work out in Excel that will plug me the associates with less amount of hours going to the department as labor share. So those ones will be prioritized. However, there are people that are saying that, oh, look, why I'm getting sent there, others are there. I'm trying to explain them about the hours. So look, this is a criteria based on why you was sent there. However, they tending to not understand and saying, oh, that you're not right. You're not playing fair the game. How to deal with this?
That's a great question, and I appreciate you bringing that up. So it sounds like what I'm hearing is the situation is you have kind of like a blanket rule around the scheduling. So like certain hours equals certain days, etc. And people are feeling like they're being unfairly put into a Sunday shift. Am I hearing that right?
So let me put it in this way. I'll use you and Jan as examples. Can I?
Okay.
Lovely. So let's say Jamie went for picking in the last month 200 hours.
Yeah.
Gianna went to picking department for 60 hours. I'm
Mm-hmm.
assigning Gianna today to go to picking and tomorrow and after tomorrow. And same time, I will try to keep you in the home department. So just to balance the amount of hours. Gianna's coming to me and
Oh.
saying, "Oh, look, that's not fair. I'm going there third day in a row, but Jamie's is within the department at the same time. Why it keep sending me there? I'm bringing the
Ah,
Excel up to them and
okay.
showing them that look, based on this data, based on the amount of hours spent on the process, but on the last month, Jamie have 200 hours spent on the process, and you have only 40. So I'm trying to make it fair for everyone. Here, she's turning around and saying, "But wait, I'm doing third day in a row. She's doing third day in a row in the home department.
Mhm.
You're not playing fair the game."
Yeah, okay. So it sounds like somebody doesn't like picking. So that's kind of what I'm getting from that scenario. So if someone doesn't like it, this is a great opportunity. Actually, I'm glad that you asked this because this is a great opportunity to now start getting curious and asking questions. So rather than saying, "Hey, it's intended to balance out the hours," rather say, "What is it that makes you not want to do picking today?" Like you've done 40 hours of picking so far. What
My
makes you
legs
not want
hurt.
to do more than that?
My
Okay.
legs hurt. Legs hurt.
Oh, my legs hurt. No, that's awful. I understand that. That's exhausting and frustrating. I get it. What would make this feel better for you to do some picking? Would it help to know that once you hit this many hours, you don't have to do it again until next month? Right? So asking those kinds of questions, like, what is it? Because what we're looking at now is a situation where someone doesn't like a particular kind of job, and that's fine. And maybe this could even be an opportunity for you as a leader to consider changing the way that you do things. So, for example, maybe I like picking and I have 200 hours because I love doing it. I like the exercise. I like walking around. I like doing the scanning. I like that it might be something I enjoy. Whereas somebody else might just absolutely hate it. And so there could be an opportunity here to be like, okay, let's look at this. If you really hate it that much, what would feel fair to you? And get that feedback and get that understanding. You have the option to change the approach. It doesn't necessarily have to be that everyone has the same amount of hours, right? So that's something to consider. But I would invite you to keep that open mind, right? When we talk about the discussion and going through like the check framework, keep that open mind. Maybe there's a different way to do it that you just haven't thought of yet. So instead of
Well,
just pushing the policy, say, okay, I hear you. Let's look at how we might change this. That make sense?
now, now let me tell you the beginning of the story. So Jamie came to me and complained that she's having 200 hours over there. You need to find a way. Vasily, you need to find a way because I'm spending 200 hours in picking, but Jana, she's not doing that, not going there very often. You're not fair to
Ah,
me.
brilliant.
So that's the
Okay,
beginning
this
of
is
the story.
perfect.
So from there, I said, like, okay, you're right. Let me look
Yeah,
into. Let me uh, let me try to make a plan for that. Diving
yeah,
deeper in data, I'm seeing that Jamie have 200 hours in picking when Gianna is having 140. So I'm
yeah.
trying to make it fair for everyone. Gian, I'm sorry. I hope you're not getting upset because I'm pointing at you. Thank you. So, uh,
Um, so this is great, actually. So thank you for giving me that flip side. So here, now the aid framework comes in handy, right? So now let's get Gianna and Jamie in a room together and say, hey, listen, maybe you two can help me. Here's the thing that's happening. Gianna has only picked this many hours, and I started to give Gianna more picking hours, but she's feeling frustrated by that. Jamie came to me because she picked 200 hours already and is feeling like all she ever does is picking and she wants to do something different. So I'm bringing you both into the room now to help me figure out what's the best way to handle this. You might be surprised to find that because the two are interested in teamwork, it might be like, okay, fair enough. Jamie, I didn't know you already picked 200 hours. I don't like picking. It makes my legs hurt, but I'm going to do my best because you're right. I shouldn't have to do it all. Like, that's fine. Right. So that's where the aid framework comes in because now you're going to acknowledge both people's experience. And then you're going to investigate, okay, what do we need to look at here? We know that this much picking needs to be done, and we have this many hours to work with, and you're both on the same shift. And you both have the ability to pick. So, how do we make this work? And then it becomes that discussion, right? The D part of the aid framework. Now we can collaborate and the two can come together. Maybe they come to some sort of a compromise. Gianna, if you pick on Tuesdays and Thursdays, then I'll pick the other days. And then maybe the next week we'll switch and I'll do 3 days and you do 2 days. And you just kind of get them collaborating on that. What do you think?
Yeah, sounds a plan. However, Jamie came to me, didn't point to Gianna. She said, like, I know there are people doing that.
Mm,
Like, I know, look, Vas, you know, I'm seeing me myself every day on the rota assigned to the picking. However, I'm seeing same time other people that are not assigned there very often. They go in there just to keep their eligibilities and training on to do overtime. However, on their shift, they're not going there. They're just doing indirect roles, going up and down here and there. While Jamie is not doing any indirect role.
yeah, so and here's the situation here is that you're not necessarily going to them because they pointed at each other.
What? So
You're
sorry.
bringing them in because they
What I
came to
wanna
you
say.
separately.
Sorry for interrupting you. Just to give you my opinion about the situation. I don't know why I will try to avoid confronting them.
Hmm.
Like, look, you're saying this, you're saying this. I need from you a decision. Let's look into it together. I will try to avoid that because Jamie already don't like Gianna that she's not going there.
Mm,
And Gianna don't like Jamie because she's being sent to picking because Jamie should have already 200 hours
mm,
because she likes to be in picking.
mm.
Why are you sending
Yeah.
me that? So this is the guy. This, to be honest, this is the real situation. I'm bringing up to you.
Yes.
This
Yeah.
is a real
And
situation.
I'm glad that you're bringing it up because it sounds like what you're telling me is it's something you've been avoiding and it's an opportunity for you to put this into practice because the biggest thing here is to not avoid the potential conflict. It's I forget who said it earlier. Someone, I think it was Alex, saying like having a challenge avoiding conflict. Conflict can't be avoided. Like the conflict's already there, right? Because they've come to you separately because they think these things already, the conflict is already there. So we can't avoid it. Now we have to manage it. And that's where putting this framework into action would be helpful. So it really is better to get them in a room together, even if they don't like each other. But it's just like, listen, we have to talk about this because we're all here with the same end goal in mind. We've got to get these things done. We've got to get this picking done. We've got to whatever. Like, I know that it's not always easy. This is the acknowledgement part, right? I know it's not always easy. I know sometimes it's tiring. I know we don't like, I know we like certain jobs better than others. I know we like to do things differently. It's really important that we all come together to make sure that this gets accomplished and that we're doing it in a way that feels fair to everyone. And then that's when you get that, you start investigating and you start collaborating. But that acknowledgement piece is going to be key. Like you've got to get them in a room together and just acknowledge, like, hey, I get it. Like it's frustrating, it's tiring. You both have your own experiences. Let them each speak their piece. And you've got to kind of be that mediator, that middle person. It's like, okay, everything you say is valid for you. Everything you say is valid for you. I hear you. I get it. How can we bring this together? How can we come to a solution that makes that you both feel good about? Make sense? I would love for you to practice it and put it in your reflect and grows. I think that would be amazing.
I'll try to. I cannot
Thank you
promise,
for
but I'll
that.
try to.
Thank you for that. Gianna, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to bring your attention. There's a really interesting case on the chart if you want to have a look on that. Mada gave some great answers there, but just going to voice it out.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, so experience challenges with focus or fluctuating moods, sometimes related to ADHD. Okay, yeah. Leadership or teamwork setting, what's the best way to communicate and work effectively with team members who might have these mood or attention shifts? Oof, that is such a real challenge, right? I'm so glad that you brought that up, Hen. Okay, so might need tighter rein for these people, but always test to see if it works. and it isn't perceived as micromanagement. Okay, yeah. People with shorter attention spans might need to work one goal at a time. Okay. Instead of working with broader goals, approach goals one by one. Yes. Those are great, Mata. I love these. And yeah, I agree. Communication is key. Like, does it help to break this down? This is really him. I'm so glad that you brought this up because everyone operates differently. And I think first and foremost, especially because we were talking about aid and we were talking about acknowledge, we want to make sure that we are not making people feel like they're wrong for being the way that they are. So mood fluctuations can be challenging, even for the person. Like, yes, it's going to be challenging for you as the leader and for the team, but for the person, it's challenging too, especially if you don't understand where it's coming from. And losing focus. I know ADHD is an actual real thing. And also with technology and the way that the world moves so quickly, I feel like all of us have a little bit of ADHD these days. Like, it's very difficult. There was a study done last year actually that showed that on average, people had the attention span of about 8 seconds. So we're basically all goldfish. So it can be really challenging. But I think first and foremost, giving that acknowledgement, like, listen, I understand that this is the way you're wired. It doesn't make you wrong. It doesn't make you bad. Let's see if there's a way that we can work on different approaches that will help you. So I think starting with that acknowledgement piece could go very far. And then everything else that Mata said here, I think is brilliant. So because that's that support piece, right? So if we're going to give feedback and we're going to try and get them to move in a certain direction, we want to offer them support and resources. Would it be helpful for you if we tried this? Maybe let's find some resources for you to help you stay focused. Do they know what their employee benefits are? Because sometimes there's EAPs that can offer them other tools and resources for their particular situation. So make sure that they're aware of that. If you have to get HR involved, get HR involved. Like, you can do those things. But the idea is to approach it from a position of support, not a position of fixing. I hope that makes sense. Multitasking kills their productivity. They might start on one thing, abandon it, and move to the next. Oh, that's so true. That is so true. Multitasking is like, people used to say multitasking was a good skill to have. I think it's actually very detrimental to our well-being. We don't want to multitask. We want to do one thing at a time. It's so much better. Yeah, I'm glad that you said that. I think that's so true. But let me know, Hem, if that's helpful. Between what Mata said and what I said, let me know if that helps you at all. Because that is like a real, so the struggle is real on that one. I get it. I get it. And also even what Vasily was saying earlier about, oh, but my legs hurt. Yeah, well, that's the nature of the job, right? We're on our feet all day. I don't know what to tell you about that. But it's like making sure that we're acknowledging that piece. Like, I get it, I understand it. And also we have to work within what we have. Like, let's find a way to make this happen. But getting that communication in is important. Ooh, that was such good discussion. Thank you all for that. Fabulous. All right. Okay. Problem solving. We want analytical thinking, solution development, implementation, monitoring, and adaptation. So this is basically looking at whatever the challenging situation is, collaboratively finding some solutions, put that solution into action, and then we're going to just check on progress and make adjustments as needed. So how confident are you feeling in these skills? So tell me, where do you feel most confident? What feels most challenging? I'll give you a moment and I'm going to drink some more water. I see some typing happening. All right, so let me know. Analytical thinking, solution development, implementation, or monitoring and adaptation. 1, 2, 3, or 4. Are there any of them that feel particularly challenging or any that you feel most confident in? Feel free to share. All right. Well, I saw some typing happening, but then it stopped. If you feel like sharing your confidence level, please do. I'm going to continue on, but I will come back to the chat. So please don't feel like just because I've moved on, you cannot now respond. Please do respond. All right. So let's dive in. Mindset for effective problem solving and decision making. We know growth mindset already, right? We talked about that a little bit with our feedback. We want to be curious, we want to keep an open mind, and we want to build our resilience. So being curious, always asking, ask why, what makes it do that? What makes it do that? Why this? Why that? Like keep digging into, and then we want to challenge those assumptions. You've got the check framework for that. Keeping that open mind, so consider alternative viewpoints. In fact, I love to invite contradiction. Tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me why this won't work. That's going to help you keep an open mind. And then viewing setbacks as learning opportunities, not failures. So if something doesn't go the way you expected, that doesn't necessarily mean it was wrong or bad. So these are words that I would love to just take out of every leader's brain and mouth. Wrong or bad or fix. Like nothing is wrong or bad or needs fixing. It's just the outcome that we saw isn't what we wanted. Let's try something different. We want to get a different outcome, right? And that's how we build resilience. The more we can see these setbacks as an opportunity to try something new, it's an opportunity to investigate, figure out why didn't this give me the outcome I wanted? Get curious, ask, and then, okay, let's try something different. See if we get the outcome that we do want, right? So, analytical thinking. Let's dive in. So if we want to get to the root cause of something, so when we were talking earlier about the AID framework and we got to that I for investigate, this is a deeper look at what that might be. So if we're investigating, we want to understand the data. So let's look at the numbers. So Vasila gave that example of this person has 200 hours, this person has 40 hours. It only makes sense to increase this person's hours to match up, right? So that's the data that we're looking at. What are the patterns? Any trends or outliers? So what is happening to where this person only has 40 hours? Like what's been going on? Are they coming in at a certain time and that means that automatically the picking has already started, so they're going somewhere else? Are they complaining a lot? Like what is the situation? So look for the patterns. Consider the context, the external factors, what might be happening, what's going on. Is like what Hem was bringing up. Is this person subject to mood swings? Are they living with ADHD? Is this something that they need accommodation for that might be impacting them? And then just ask that why question. Why are the shipments late? Why is picking slow? Why is the layout inefficient? What is happening? And then you want to cross-check that with the data. Do the numbers match what the patterns that I'm seeing? Do the numbers match the behaviors that I'm seeing? Like what's going on here? And then you want to start to take action. And so that is root cause analysis. That is our analytical thinking. Does all of this make sense? Let me know if you have any questions or if anything is not quite landing. And we'll dig into, oops, I'm skipping past slides without meaning to. We'll start digging into the priority matrix in just a moment. Okay, I see no questions. Cool. All right. Okay, so once we have gone through our root cause analysis and we start thinking of solutions, we want to look at what takes priority. And this can be a very big challenge, especially in a big company like Amazon. Like this needs to be changed, this needs to be evaluated, this is an issue that's coming up. All of these things need to be addressed. How do I know which one to prioritize? So you want to think about the impact, right? You want to figure out like what is urgent and important, what is urgent, not so important, what's not urgent, but important, what's not urgent and not important. So if you think about it in this context, that can help you decide which thing am I going to tackle first? These 5 issues exist that I know I need to address at some point. Which one am I going to tackle first? This matrix can help you with that. All right. And this is actually one of those sort of tools that you could actually have on hand, that you could even print out or like draw on a sheet of paper and make your 4 boxes: urgent, important, not important, not urgent, important, not important, right? And then you can actually brainstorm through that with like a peer or with your team, whatever. Okay. So some common pitfalls: jumping to conclusions, confirmation bias, overlooking context, analysis paralysis. A lot of this stuff we addressed in the effective communication frameworks. They come in handy for all of this stuff. We want to make sure that we're not assuming that our immediate conclusion is the right one. We also don't want to go and find people who are just going to agree with us. As leaders, the most detrimental thing we could have is a team full of yes men. We don't want yes men. We want people to tell us what could go wrong. Why am I wrong? Why will this not work? Why is this a bad idea? Like, let me know, right? That's going to get us through that confirmation bias. And then we don't want to overlook the context. So we don't want to zero in on just this one tiny thing. We want to kind of zoom out before we go in. And then the analysis paralysis. We need to make a decision. Give me a virtual hand raise if you're a perfectionist. I know I've been there. I'm a recovering perfectionist, I like to say. I still have my moments. But analysis paralysis is that perfectionism. We can go over the numbers 80 billion times. We can brainstorm solutions 80 billion times. At some point, we just have to make a decision, right? So this checklist is really great for addressing any cognitive bias. We all have biases. We try not to. I know, like, we're in a very diplomatic, politically correct world. We like to think that we're not biased, but humans by nature, we have biases. We don't mean to. It's really important for us to check those, right? You've got the check framework already. Now this is another little checklist that you can use to double check and make sure that you're not being biased. So have you gotten all the input? Have you deliberately looked for a contradiction? Have you factored in all of the external influences? Have you set a decision deadline so that you don't get stuck in analysis paralysis? And make sure that you are making the decisions based on critical insights, not just your immediate surface level observation. Like if I say, oh, this person's slow today, they must be tired. You don't know that. Like, go chat to them, find out what's slowing them down. Maybe their scanner is broken. You don't know. So double check those. So this is another one of those things. So the prioritization matrix and the cognitive bias checklist, these are things that you could actually literally have printed up and handy if you ever need to use them, just to kind of go through and like work things through your mind before you move forward with anything. Okay, so to avoid all of these pitfalls, jumping to conclusions, to avoid it, ask yourself what else could be true. To avoid confirmation bias, play the opposing viewpoint game. I like to call it devil's advocate, but intentionally look for evidence that proves you wrong. Asking for input, like, what is going to make this not work? Why will this solution that I've thought of not work? Tell me, how could I break this? Get those kinds of inputs. Look for the context, zoom out before zooming in, and then to avoid analysis paralysis, use the 80% rule. Done is better than perfect, right? As long as a solution or a process change or a new procedure, policy, whatever, as long as it's 80% ready to go, get it out there, because the other 20% can be tweaked and changed and adjusted as you go. Kind of like building the plane while it's in the air. All right, so we talked already about root cause analysis, which falls into our analytical thinking. So basically, we just want to ask those questions, right? Ask the questions, look for the patterns, get different perspectives, and use that sort of big picture thinking. So once you've gone in to get to the root cause, take another step back to look at what is the short-term impact, what is the long-term impact. If we do this today, what could possibly happen 6 months from now if we do that today, right? So kind of getting that wider view. All right. So any thoughts or any shares around analytical thinking? Is this a strength for some of you? Have any of you tackled symptoms, not necessarily root cause? What did you learn from that? Let me know. Let me know your experience with analytical thinking. Okay. All right, we've gone back to being quiet. We had such good discussion. I've worn you out. Okay. So let's look at solution development. So we want to have the problem. We want to be clear about what the problem is, right? So we want to make sure we go through that root cause analysis, that analysis of what is actually happening, what problem do we need to address. Then we're going to generate ideas. So if you remember from a previous lecture, you would have gotten a scamper method, which is a great team brainstorming tool to use. So get those ideas flowing. Then once you have your ideas, get a clear process in place. You want to take that step back, look at the big picture. What's the short term? What's the long term impact? And then you want to check for blind spots. I cannot stress enough the value and importance of getting outside perspectives and getting other opinions and really asking, like, okay, what am I not seeing? Right? You can even pop a proposed solution into ChatGPT and then ask ChatGPT, what am I not seeing? And it will tell you. AI is great for that. All right. So once you are going through the idea generation, you want to get like lots of brainstorming, get people involved, challenge all of the assumptions that might be coming up. Like, I'm assuming this is going to go this way, but why? Like, if we broke this, what would happen? That's also reverse thinking. How can we make this worse? How can we break it? And then analogous thinking is just kind of pulling from other industries that might have similar challenges and they implemented certain solutions that might be similar to what you have in your industry, and then just kind of tailor make it for your industry. All right. So that is our idea generation. How are we feeling? I know I'm going through this a little bit quicker now because I know we had such good discussion on the effective communication, and I want to make sure that we're getting through the rest of the content, but I don't want to skip space for you to share. So, any questions? How are we feeling? Are we using these things? Okay. I don't see any typing or hands raising, so I'm going to continue. All right, so how do we know which solution to use? Because when you are problem solving, you are going to create more than one solution because there's brainstorming involved. You're going to get lots of ideas. All solutions are welcome, but before you actually choose which one to take action on, you want to evaluate the cost, the time, the feasibility, the impact, and give it a grade or a number. So you're going to assign 1 to 5. 1 being minimal alignment, 5 being high or strong alignment, right? And once you get that rating, you'll get a total number. So this is an idea of what that might look like. So some proposed solutions for this particular scenario: add more shelving, cross-train, implement new software. So now we have to look the cost, time, feasibility, and impact. Each of them have a number. Now we won't necessarily choose the highest number. We want to actually look at that long-term, short-term impact, right? So it might actually be easier to cross-train staff than to implement new software, right? Because new software is going to cost a lot. It's going to take a long time. Long-term solution, yes, but we might need an immediate short-term solution in the meantime. And so that you could be implementing solution B while keeping solution C on the back burner, and then you'll tackle more action on that later when you have more time, when it makes more sense. Like if you're in the middle of holiday season, it's probably not the best time to put a new software in place, right? You want to wait till it slows down a little bit. So that is how we decide that. Okay, so how do we develop our solutions? We get clear on our problem, we get ideas, we brainstorm, we figure out what's feasible, we look at priorities, and then we're going to collaborate to make sure that we're all on board and we're all understanding what we're moving forward with. All right. So once we've gone through all of those steps, We figured out the problem. We've done our root cause analysis. We've brainstormed with the team. We've looked at our possible solutions. We've looked at what we're going to implement. Now we need to plan. So we need an action plan. We need to figure out how do we put this solution into some clear steps, some tasks, some outcomes. We're going to assign roles to people based on their strengths. So certain people are going to be better suited to execute on certain tasks. We want to make sure that there's clear accountability. What do we need to put in place to make success inevitable? What needs to be put in place to make sure that you will absolutely 100% follow through on what you've been assigned? Make sure that that is clear. And then you're going to establish collaboration points. So you're going to establish ahead of time, like how often are we going to come back together? How often are we going to look at adjusting? Let's decide this together. And then you're going to create some realistic timelines. So you've got to kind of reverse engineer it. Like, how many hours is this going to take on the whole? Okay, now let's work backwards. This many hours on this day, this many hours on this week, this many hours on this month, etc. And then you want to set those milestones so that you have like tangible check-in points. So maybe it's like every 2 weeks we check in and see, are the numbers going up or are they going down or are they staying the same? What's been happening on the floor that might impact that, right? Those kinds of things. And then you can make adjustments. So this is an example of what that might look like in action. So you're doing a change in inventory tracking by using color-coded bins. Your action plan would be first, getting feedback. Then you're going to assign ownership. You're going to probably involve shift supervisors because they oversee floor activity, right? And then set the pace. So you want to think about the pacing and the timing of actually rolling out this change. So you wouldn't want to necessarily do it over too long a period of time because it might get muddled in the mix. 1 day might be feasible for a small change like this. So you want to decide like what makes the most sense for rollout timing so that everyone can accept the change and like process the change and then actually put it into action. Okay. And then we can always make adjustments as we monitor. So you want to communicate and you want to make sure that there's always action being put in place. So you want to get feedback. That's great. You want to make sure that you are communicating to everyone what the changes are, get their feedback, get their input. You want to reduce resistance by being very transparent. The reason we're making this change is because. The reason I think this change will benefit you is because. So you want to make sure that they understand, and then you want to be as clear as possible. We talked about that in our effective communication, right? You've got all your communication tools. So make sure that everyone understands the why behind the what, and then really always encourage collaboration. So if other people have ideas of ways that this solution might get better, take those ideas in and say, okay, I hear you. I'm going to put this idea in my back pocket. Let's drive forward as it is. But as we watch the numbers and as we monitor, we can adjust and use some of these ideas that you gave, and we'll see how that goes, right? So always leave room for those different perspectives and different ideas. So when you are tracking, you want to make sure you're using SMART goals for your milestones and your goals. So you want to be specific. You want to make sure it's measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Okay. And that all fits in with what we were just discussing with the implementation. It's the same thing, just a different configuration. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Okay. How do we know that your implementation was successful? You broke the solution into small steps. You assigned clear roles so that everyone knows what they're doing. You've got timelines and you've got milestones set up so you can track. You are being flexible and adaptable, and you are making adjustments as needed if something's not working the way that you want it to. And you are constantly communicating, making sure that people are being held accountable and everyone is aligned with the overall intention and the desired outcome that you're aiming for. Okay, makes sense? Okay, so tell me What is a strategy that you will use or have used to implement a solution? Let me know. And if you don't have a strategy that you have used or that you will be using, just let me know in the chat or take yourself off mute and tell me if you have any questions, if anything is not making sense, if you need more clarity. All right, I will continue. If anything comes up, please let me know in the chat. I am still watching it. All right, so monitoring and adapting, it's kind of pretty straightforward, right? So we know about checkpoints, we know we want to get feedback, and we know we want to address challenges as they arise. The biggest thing to keep in mind for this is if something's not going the way you want, make an adjustment. That's fine. This is very cyclical. You don't just implement a solution and it's one and done. You want to track and make sure the solution's actually working. It could make things worse, you never know. And you're making adjustments to make sure that if something isn't going the way that you want it to, you're changing that. You can use a retrospective SWOT analysis, so identifying the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, not treats, it's threats. So this is an example of what that might look like. It's similar to the prioritizing matrix, but this is more looking at what worked well, what were the challenges, what's the opportunity, what other approaches might we try next? And then we're going to look at the threats. What are the obstacles that could keep this from going well? Why will this maybe not work, right? So you can kind of go through this. And this is actually a great thing that you could, again, this is one of those tools you could actually like print up and have handy. So if you did just do a big change or a rollout of a new procedure of some sort, you could actually get together with your team and sit down at a table with this little printout and be like, okay, everyone, let's talk about this. What went well? What were the challenges? What could we try different? Why would that not work? Let's identify what could potentially go wrong if we make this change, okay? So keep an eye on things, make sure it's actually working. If it's not, make adjustments. Use your reporting, use your data, which the TAs are actually going to go over with you in the skills lab, how to implement data tracking and all of that good stuff. Always get feedback, make improvements, and then regularly check in. So if you're making any kind of change, you're implementing any kind of new solution, communication is key. Always communicate. All right. So now let's do our own retrospective SWOT analysis. So I know we've been quiet for a lot of this second portion of our review with the problem solving and decision making. I encourage you strongly to jump in on this one. So this is something, if you feel comfy sharing, please do share, or take a screen grab of this really quick and use this as a reflection later. But think about, what are you most proud of and how you've shown up during this training? In what areas do you still feel unsure or inconsistent? What can you do more of or differently to keep growing? And what might get in the way of your progress? So this is your own personal retrospective SWOT analysis with your experience in this program and what you are taking away from it. I know we've had you do so much reflection during this program. This is just another opportunity to reflect and grow, right? Because as leaders, the more we go inward, the more we reflect, the more we are able to enhance and improve and grow and change and evolve and become even greater every time. All right. So I'm going to leave this up for just another few seconds. So if you do want to screen grab it, and I strongly encourage you to, if you haven't already. If you feel comfortable sharing, please do share, but you don't have to. I know these are very internal reflections and you might need to sit with them for a little bit, and that's fine. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and move on. So, final reflections for you before we go on break and get ready for Skills Lab. Please tell me one thing that you are going to hold on to from either today's review or any of the previous lectures. Like, what's one thing that you're taking with you that you feel like you can implement or do differently in work moving forward? Like, what is something that you're taking with you? What's your insight, your aha moment, your big takeaway that's like, if nothing else, I got this from this training. What is it? I see typing. You can also come off mute. That's totally fine. If you don't want to waste time typing.
Uh, can you hear me, guys?
I hear you.
So basically, like, uh, what I see on the screen is, for me, in terms of problem solving and feedback, I was very struggling. I was struggling a lot with impulsive decisions. Like, I was basically making impulsive decisions and not listening to people. That's what I've learned through your sessions, that first listen, pause, and then react. What I used to do is react before, like in the middle of listening. So that was my fault, and I'm learning from this. And I would definitely like to, like, strengthen this part of skill, which will help me to grow, kind of in terms of career and in terms of problem solving as well. Yeah, that's all.
Amazing. That's awesome. Was that Raj?
Yeah, that was Raj.
Yes, awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That's great noticing and great self-awareness. And I think a lot of us can fall into that sort of like, we think that we have to solve something now, and it's almost like going into crisis mode. Like, oh no, I have to fix this now, and then you just jump. So that's good that you really took that lesson for yourself and you're learning from it. That's amazing. And Isla says, I will use aid more to deal with conflicts. Dealing with conflicts is a skill I would like to develop the most. Yes, I am with you. That's one that I still to this day am working on. Like, managing conflict can be very difficult, and we do instinctively want to avoid it, right? But it can't be avoided. And we learn and grow so much from it when we actually work through it. So amazing. Thank you. Please do continue to share in the chat if you feel called to. I would love to hear more. But we do need to take a break so that you can get nice and refreshed before your skills lab. So I'm going to hand it over to Manuel, and then we'll go on break. Thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for the great discussion. I really just love that you brought these great scenarios to the table. That was amazing.